He walked into the dusty roadside diner like a man carrying 1,000 untold stories, frail, slow, and quiet. But when his sleeve slipped and exposed an old, faded tattoo, the whole room burst into laughter, until the USMC captain sitting at the counter stood up so fast his stool crashed to the floor. What he recognized in that ink would change everything. Where in the country are you watching from? Tell me in the comments. The afternoon sun was dipping behind the rolling Arizona desert when the old man pushed open the creaking glass door of Ridgeway Diner. He moved carefully, one stiff step at a time, leaning heavily on a scratched wooden cane. His clothes were simple, sun-bleached jeans, worn boots, and a flannel shirt with sleeves rolled halfway to his elbows. No one looked up at first. The diner was the kind of place where the locals knew each other's rhythms, and strangers were easy to label. Traveler, drifter, lost wanderer. But today, people noticed something different. It wasn't his age or his quiet entry. It was the tattoo on his forearm, faded, barely visible, yet shaped like something no one in the diner could quite recognize. And that made it an easy target. A group of young mechanics at the far booth snickered first. "Look at that," one said loudly, pointing. "Grandpa's got a comic book tattoo." Another leaned over the table and laughed harder. But he got that back in the 60s thinking he was tough. A few others turned to look, some smiling, some pitying, a few just curious. The old man ignored them. He'd ignored worse in his life. At the counter sat Captain Mason Hartley of the United States Marine Corps, home on temporary leave. His uniform wasn't on him, but everything about him radiated Marine discipline. Straight posture, sharp eyes, tightly clipped hair. He was nursing a cup of black coffee while scanning messages from his unit. He didn't join the laughter, but he did glance over. At first, he saw nothing but an old man trying to get to an empty seat. But then the light hit the tattoo, just right, and Mason froze. No, that couldn't be. He squinted, leaning forward, his breath catching. The symbol wasn't a cartoon. It wasn't random. It wasn't anything the laughing mechanics thought it was. It was a trident entwined with a lightning bolt, surrounded by a spiked ring. An insignia that hadn't been used publicly for decades. A unit symbol spoken of mostly in Marine Corps legend. A covert reconnaissance group long believed to have been dissolved, though rumors hinted it had simply gone deeper underground. Mason had seen that symbol only once in classified historical briefings. And even then, it was described as need to know, extremely restricted, do not discuss. If this old man wore it, he wasn't just someone from the past. He was someone important, someone dangerous, someone who had once belonged to a unit that operated behind enemy lines in missions the government still denied ever happened. "Sir," Mason said, standing sharply. The mechanics fell silent as they watched him approach the old man, like a junior Marine approaching a general. Mason swallowed hard. Where did you get that tattoo?" The diner went quiet. The old man lifted his eyes, calm and unreadable. "Long time ago," he said softly. "Different world." Mason's heart thudded. "Is it real? Were you with them?" A flicker of surprise crossed the old man's face. Not fear, not pride, but something like the weary acceptance of someone who knew this question might find him one day. He motioned for Mason to sit. The mechanics, sensing something strange, leaned forward. "The name's Randall Pierce," the old man said, lowering himself onto the stool. "Retired gunnery sergeant. I served with Marine Recon. If you know that name, you know you're not supposed to." Mason felt his throat go dry. The mechanics looked at each other, unsure whether this was a joke. But Mason wasn't laughing. "Sir, Shadowlance is a myth." Pierce shook his head slowly. "Myth is what they call truth when truth becomes inconvenient." The diner staff, 2 waitresses and the cook, stopped pretending they weren't listening. A hum of tension filled the room. The old man rested both hands on the counter, revealing scars so old they'd turned silver under the skin. "You boys laughing earlier," he said without turning. "You think I'm just another old relic? You're right. I'm old. But relic." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Relics don't walk out of the places I've walked out of." The room remained silent. Mason couldn't stop staring. "Why haven't I ever seen your name in any record?" "You won't," Pierce replied. "Because they scrubbed us. Every mission, every roster, even our dead. We were ghosts even to the core. A mechanic, suddenly bolder, called out, "If you're some secret Marine, prove it." Mason whipped around. "Shut up. You don't understand who you're speaking to." But Pierce raised a hand. "It's all right." He reached inside his shirt and pulled out a small tarnished dog tag, unlike any Mason had ever seen. Instead of a number, it carried a series of symbols, encrypted identifiers used only in ultra-classified operations. Mason exhaled shakily. It was real, all of it. But then something shifted in the old man's expression, as if a memory had clawed its way back from a place he'd locked away for decades. "Captain," Pierce said quietly, "if you recognize that tattoo, then something's happening. They wouldn't teach it to your generation unless there was a reason." Mason stiffened. He hadn't intended to reveal that. The unit symbol wasn't supposed to be referenced at all outside certain rooms in the Pentagon. So why'd have been shown it? Why now? "What do you know?" Mason asked. Pierce glanced at the diners, the mechanics, the waitresses, the wanderers who had just stumbled into something far bigger than they understood. "Not here," he said. "But I know this. When governments get nervous, they start resurrecting old ghosts." Before Mason could respond, the diner door swung open violently. Two men in dark clothing stepped inside.